So what we're going to do is we're here to expose it, let people tell their story, and let everybody in the public see the horrors of the court system in Suffolk County, New York.
Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory, the alternative to News 12, Cablevision, and the Newsday monopoly here on Long Island. I've done a lot of shows. Many of you know the reason I got involved in this is because of the corruption in the family court system here on Long Island. It's sort of expanded out into all the corruption and all good stories and the news that we want to get out that you can't see in the traditional mainstream media. So I've done a lot of shows about how bad the court system is, and by now, if you don't get the idea that the court system here on Long Island sucks, then you need to get your head examined, because I've done a lot of shows, we've shown horror stories, and it's bad. So then I've done a lot of shows about why you should, if you want to get divorced, which 50% of people do, why you should stay out of the courts and why you should use mediation, at least try it before you go to court. So I decided today to do something a little bit different with my next guest, and I decided to talk about the actual mediation process so people know what to expect with mediation, why it's different than court. So this show sort of takes off from you're watching it and you realize that, hey, you know what, I want to do mediation. Many people who do mediation do it because they already went through the court system with a divorce once before and realize how bad it is. Some do it because they don't have the money. So now I searched and I wanted to get somebody who really, really knows this stuff with mediation, and my next guest is that person. So Jeffrey Bloom is my guest. He has over 16 years experience as a litigation paralegal and conflict resolution specialist. He served honorably in the United States Air Force for 17 years and participated in both Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. He is the CEO and founder of Creative Resolution Group, and his goal is to become the premier mediation alternative dispute resolution expert on Long Island and the greater metro area. Jeffrey has received his law degree from Concord Law School and his master's degree in negotiation and dispute resolution from Creighton University. So bottom line is Jeff is not somebody I can ever win an argument with, although some people on Facebook try unsuccessfully. So Jeff, welcome to Long Island Backstory, and thanks for coming today.
And that's for another show.
That's another show, exactly. So let's start off. How does one start off? Somebody's watching the show, they Googled divorce mediation. How does somebody go about choosing a mediation or mediation group?
Well, generally, most of my clients, I would say 95, 96% find me on the internet, and the rest from referrals from either prior clients or networking, stuff like that. But generally how the process starts is I get the initial phone call. That's usually one or the other.
And are all mediation groups created equal?
No,
or mediators, I should say.
No, there's a big difference. And when we get to, we were talking earlier before the show started, what makes me different, why am I unique, why should people come to me? I'll discuss some of that. But one of the fallacies or the myths that happen is there are attorney mediators out there, and without the mediation training. So they're trained in how to be an advocate, how to fight for somebody, and they think that because they're an attorney, oh, I can mediate. And they don't have that mediation training background.
The mindset is different.
The mindset is very different. But there are attorneys I know who go through the mediation process as far as the training, so they know the difference between the two processes of mediating and advocating. I've had attorneys coming through my mediation training courses and different things like that. So there's a problem when attorneys say they're mediators without the training, and they give a lot of misinformation to people. And I have to deal with that almost on a daily basis.
Right. So let me ask, which spouse should call a mediator? Let's say you're getting divorced, and not always did you discuss this, because a lot of times you're getting divorced because you can't get along, and maybe it's in the heat of the moment and you're fighting. But you had mentioned to me once, well, I don't like to have a long conversation with one spouse or the other, because then it seems like there may be a bias, and maybe there is, because whoever you spoke to first could sort of give you their side of the story. So tell me about that, but somebody has to call you.
Right, somebody has to call first.
So what happens? Somebody picks up the phone and says, I'm getting divorced, I want to get...
Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs. I want to get divorced for my wife. We're both on the same page, and I want to know about mediation.
So you need to be on the same page first? You need to both be in agreement first?
Not necessarily. It helps if you're both in agreement to at least come in and find out about the mediation process. Or if you're both, yeah, we talked about it, we want to get divorced or we want to get separated. The toughest cases are, well, my wife doesn't know this is what I'm looking for, or so I'll get the wife to call, my husband doesn't know. That's a little bit more difficult. But when they call, I get very basic information, and there's a reason for that, like you just said. If I get to meet with them and I mediate, I'm a neutral third party. And the more information I get from one side, then, everybody's human, right? You get that, taking sides. Well, my husband's an alcoholic, and he's cheated on me, or my wife did this. So basically, I'll get the name, how long they've been married, or any children and assets, and I'll say, I offer a free 30-minute consultation for you both to come into the office, ask whatever questions you want. There's no obligation, and let's see if I can help you. Well, can I come in myself? I don't do that, and I tell them why. You come into me, Gary, and you come by yourself, and you leave. And you go home to your wife and you say, I just met with Jeff, he's a mediator, he's really good, let's go and see him. What did he tell him? He's on his side. Right. So that eliminates that.
Right, yeah, and I think that's a smart move. So let's ask, how long does the mediation process take? How many meetings is it? And I'll tell the people who are watching this, I was in divorce court for 11 years. Wow. I know many people who have, now that doesn't mean the actual divorce took that long. That may have only taken 3 years, 4 years. Still a long time out of your life. 10 years, 11 years, best case scenario is 10% of your life I spent in court.
Well, the litigation process, even at a good time, it's going to take you at least 2 years to get before a judge.
Right.
So the mediation process, after the initial consultation, averages 4 to 6 sessions. That's the average.
And is this for people who are not, is mediation for people who are sort of getting along, or they say, oh, we grow separate ways? Or can you come into a mediation where, as you said, you just caught your husband, for example, cheating, and you're pissed off?
You don't have to agree on anything. I've had couples come in with a list of things they all agree on, and they want to just finalize a couple of things. I've had couples that come in, they both can't agree what day of the week it is. And everything in between. So one of the other misconceptions or myths is, well, don't we have to agree? Don't we have to want to sit down together? Do we have to have some things we agree upon? You don't. That's what I'm there for.
Do you have to be talking?
Not necessarily. I mean, when you're there, you do. Right. But my job is to help get through the underlying issues. Sometimes it's not about the assets and who gets what. It's about who's hurt. We use the example of one spouse is cheating on the other one, or infidelity. I have a couple I'm working with now. He admitted that, he was seeing somebody else, and through the mediation process, I'm still working with them. She's very, very slow on budging on certain things when we're trying to meet, somewhere in the middle or negotiate. But people have that myth that, they go to an attorney and, well, my husband or my wife cheated on me, they think they're entitled to more things. And it's not true. It's just not true. Right. It doesn't matter. Right. It matters to that person because they're hurt, but it doesn't matter in regards to what happens in the divorce.
Which is something I always say. It's a word that really, really annoys me in the divorce realm, is entitled.
Yeah.
Because who says what you're entitled to? Because a court says you're entitled to this, and what the court says you're entitled to today is different than what it said you were entitled to 10 years ago, and what it may say you're entitled to 5 years down the road. That's a moving target.
Well, not only that,
I don't think anybody's entitled.
No. But not only that, you go to an attorney, and what do they tell you? Everything you want to hear.
Right.
The sun, the moon,
best
I'll get you
in the
this,
world.
No problem, you'll get that, you're entitled to this. And people are emotional, and that's what they want to hear. And they wind up spending all their money and depleting their kids' college funds, or even worse. And then they go to the litigation process, and they get to a point where they're out of money, so they're forced to sign a stipulation settlement that doesn't work for one or the other. And then you know what happens after that? You have to go back to court.
And I hear all the time, Jeff, people say, well, my friends all told me they got this. My friend got this. And,
my friend has 2 kids too, and he makes the same money.
It's the same exact thing. Yeah. And
it's not the same.
First of all, you don't know what everybody
Exactly.
got. So not everybody is truthful with the situation. But very commonly I'll hear, especially a woman, going in and saying, well, I am going to get custody because every woman I know gets custody. And that maybe used to be true, but it's not true now. It's still a crapshoot. And here's what I say. Yes, on Long Island, probably 90% of mothers will get custody. Do you want to be that 1 in 10 who doesn't get custody? For you, it's 100%. You want to gamble when you could go to a mediator and mediate and get shared custody and enjoy your kids, or do you want to take a chance that you're going to be paying your husband child support. Also, I tell people shared custody, that's my big thing is mediation, is because a lot of the money stuff, it almost doesn't matter. You pretty much know where it's going to be. You know what's right, and if they go to court and fight it out and spend all their money in court, the money is pretty much going to be a formula. So
you never know what you can get. You never know what a judge is going to do.
You never know anything, but you have an idea where it's going to be.
And here's a perfect example. I recommend to the clients or the couple, they don't have to, but if they want to have a review attorney or a consulting attorney during the process, that's fine. So I have one couple I worked with a couple of years ago, and we're calculating child support. You know, Child Support Standards Act is 17% for one child, 25% for two, 29% for three. They have 3 children. And the cap, which isn't a hard cap, but the cap on child support is $143,000 combined income presently. So she comes into the mediation session and says, you know what, I want to calculate it above the cap. I want everything included. Because my attorney told me that I'll get it. And I said, be careful. You know, your attorney is going to tell you what you want to hear. He can't guarantee you that. Normally, and I read cases and I'm up on the law, and I'm not an attorney, but if there's a big disparity in income, you know, we're talking about millions or then you might go above the cap. Right. But they're only about, if I remember correctly, or $40,000, $50,000 apart in income. So she says, but Jeff, you're not an attorney. I said, you're right, I'm not. But he can't. The best attorney in the world cannot guarantee an outcome.
If they tell you they guarantee and run.
They just can't. You can't guarantee it.
You know, I have people all the time that tell me, my attorney told me that I'm going to get custody. And I say, well, first of all, your attorney only knows what you told your attorney. So that's your side of the story. Believe me, your spouse has their side of the story too. And their attorney will tell them that they have a good shot. And the truth is, both of you have a good shot. Right. Because it is a crapshoot. It's up to the judge. I tell you which judge. Some judges give it to women more. Some judges give it to men more. I mean,
and they're going to base decisions on the law, not who knows what's in the best interest of the children and both of you than the 2 people. Right. And what's guaranteed is not going to an attorney. What's guaranteed is you're in a mediation session, and you both have a say in everything that goes into the final agreement, the final paperwork. Nobody telling you what to do. That's guaranteed.
Right. Absolutely. And so, what should people expect the mediation process to be like? I've never gone through mediation. What is a mediation session like?
Mediation sessions generally last an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, probably as much as 2 hours. Usually that's enough for a couple to be sitting in a room together to try to negotiate things. And like I said, the average is 4 to 6 meetings. I've had some longer, some shorter. I have 1 or 2 cases now going on, one over 8 months, one over a year, but it depends on the couple. So they mediate, and between each session, I provide them with a memorandum of understanding via email within 24 to 48 hours based on everything we discussed. Make sure we're all on the same page. Make sure I didn't misunderstand anything. They didn't have any questions. And at some point, we'll get to a point where the memorandum, and they'll say, Jeff, it's good. We're ready to start the final paperwork. I'll then draft the agreement. I'll send that to them to review and approve. Once they approve that, I put together a no-fault divorce package. I file everything in court for them. I follow the status when the judge signs the final judgment of divorce, which is generally, like, Nassau County is the best. I'll try to file all my cases in Nassau, and that doesn't matter where the couple lives. 4 to 6 months, and Nassau County's been averaging for final judgment of divorce by a judge, and they're done. They don't have to be in court, nothing. It's very easy.
Right. So let me ask you this. How much does it cost, first of all?
I have pricing packages, and you're talking about what do I do that other mediators don't. So other mediators across the board, they'll charge an hourly fee. Then there's a charge for no-fault divorce package. There's a charge for the agreement. There's a charge for court fees and filing fees and disbursements. And I have pricing packages all-inclusive. So they know from the start what it is they're going to pay, unless something comes up. And the only other extras would be if they have to have an expert or forensic accountant or somebody to evaluate something. So you call another mediator, and how much does it cost? I don't give that over the phone. It's right on my website. I've had many couples. The reason we chose you is because we knew what we were going to pay. The prices are right on the website. So everything's included, and there are some mediators say, well, it depends, and it's a minimum. The average is 6 to 8 sessions. How you don't know that? You haven't even met with them. How do you know how many sessions it's going to be?
Right.
So couples seem to like that. I add value. My lowest package right now, and my price is going to be changing into the new year, but my up to 6 hours of mediation with all the paperwork, all the court fees, is $47.97.
Which is less than even a retainer.
A retainer at a law firm is what, 5 to 10 each, 15?
It's $7,500 is pretty much the going rate. If they charge you less, they're going to hit you.
And that's each.
With more. Yeah, each one.
Yeah,
right. Each party.
This is $5,000 total, less than $5,000 total.
Right. What about custody? So I think a lot of people think if, we could do mediation if our kids are older and they're out and it's just splitting the assets. What about, I know you can do it if they agree, but what happens if the parties going into it, both of them don't want to give up custody? Is that something you can deal with?
It's happened a few times. You have those stickler situations where somebody wants to give in. I don't like to use the word custody. I like to use residential parent. It's a little friendlier, right, than custody. But somebody has to be, according to paperwork, in order for courts to accept it, somebody has to be the residential parent, where the children live most of the time. So it's residential parent, joint decision making, joint custody.
So you can't, even as a mediator, you can't give somebody joint residential custody?
I can't.
Oh, I'm asking, can you?
I've had a few cases like that. You can have joint, but somebody still has to be the residential parent. Mm-hmm. So you could say, for example, Mary Smith is a residential parent because the children live there most of the time, but both agree that they're going to spend time 50-50 with the kids, So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is with mom, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is with dad, and each switch to weekends. So as close to 50-50 as possible. That happens. So you can do that, yes. But it's what they want. It's not what I tell them what to do.
So what about the new laws as it relates to spousal support? There's always the argument, and I know even in mediation, it's one of the things that you can work with, where the courts, they just say this is what it is, and you have no say in it. But there had been a thing where it was good to call some of the payments for, was it to spousal support, it was better to call it alimony because it wasn't taxed? Or?
Yeah, well, it's called maintenance, spousal support. And the calculation for that is generally if there's more than a 2/3 difference in income is when the calculations come into play, and then based on the length of the marriage, 50%, 30%, 50%, depending on how many years. Now, up until now, and even actually as of now, because tax laws haven't changed yet, child support isn't reported income to the mom. Let's just say the mom's a residential parent, and dad can't deduct that as an expense. Spousal support, dad can deduct it, mom's got to declare it as income. So the new tax law that they're talking about is now spousal support is not going to be deductible and doesn't have to be labeled as income.
So then it won't matter anymore.
Right. So now couples have the option, and sometimes they'll do that, where let's just say the non-residential parent can't afford child support and maintenance. It's just they can't do it because we talked right off the air in a lot of other stories that living under the same style of life, you can't do that. You're living separate and apart. So let's say in the calculations, child support is $1,500 a month and spousal support is $1,500 a month. That's $3,000 a month, a lot of money. So they might say, you know what, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $2,500 a month and we'll include it all as child support. So you don't have to declare it as income. I don't get the deduction. You're getting more. We're deviating from the formula. And that's what most couples do.
Right. Yeah, because that's one of the things I talk about. The Child Support Standards Act doesn't take, this formula that you talked about, doesn't take into account real life situations. And I think, I met with a couple that used your program. What I liked was you had sat down with them and said, okay, the mother was going to basically be the custodial parent. That was agreed because of the guy's job. And they sat down and they spelled out, what does the husband need to live? And you worked off of that and said, okay, look, here's what he needs to live.
Right.
But if he goes by the Child Support Standards Act, he's
do it.
not going to live.
Right, exactly.
So what's reasonable? And the woman ended up seeing it that way. Because, if you...
And sometimes you got to bring them back to reality.
Right.
They'll throw numbers at it and they don't mean anything.
Numbers and numbers, but
so
at
look,
the end of the
here's
day...
the budget. Here's budget forms. What does it cost you to live? What's going to cost you to live? These are real numbers
important.
now.
Especially on Long Island. Apartments are expensive as hell here on Long Island. And it's only, and listen, and the truth is if you do go to court and you get one of these crazy settlements, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the judge, sometimes there's a detachment of reality where they'll say, well, the judge said you have to pay it. But you can't get blood from a stone.
Exactly.
The person, and what happens is then they end up back in court, they end up losing their license, so then they lose their job, they end up in jail, so they lose their job, and it's just snowballs,
it's crazy.
and
you go to court,
nothing.
You go to court, you get divorced, and the judge says, Gary, you've got to pay your ex-wife $3,500 a month. Well, Judge, I can't. Too bad.
That's what the formula says.
So maybe you try, you work 2 or 3 jobs, and maybe do it for 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, who knows. At some point, like you said, now I can't pay it. Now mom's got to take you back to court. She's got to hire an attorney. You've got to hire an attorney. There's more cost there. Why not be able to meet in a mediation session and decide what works for both of you? It's less likely that neither one of you are going to breach that agreement because you both had a say in what went into it.
So this is something that people have asked me. When people call me about divorce and they say, you know, hey, I'm getting ready to file in court, what do they always ask me? Give me the shark. I want a shark lawyer. I want the nastiest son of a bitch because I hate my wife, you know. And I say, well, listen, let's talk about mediation. And one of the things that they ask me is, well, I get the same deal and if I go to mediation. And I tell them, first of all, maybe.
It could.
Could.
With
maybe,
a lot of money, right?
Maybe not. But even if you did get the same deal, you don't get the same deal because you're going to spend a ton of money.
And there's less to split at the end.
So there is less money there. So the deal is almost always better, and at least you're happy. I'd say wipe out this idea of what your friends told you, your family told you, your divorce lawyer who gave you the free consultation told you, because they're salespeople. You know, these big offices.
Get educated.
They don't get from nothing. Learn about it. And I say when you get a divorce, you want your kids to be taken care of. Everybody wants their kids to be taken care of. And you want to be able to survive. The reality is, every parent that I've ever met wants to take care of their children. It's an innate thing that they want to take. Nobody says, hey, I got $1 million in the bank, but I don't want my kids to get a new pair of sneakers. You know, they don't want the ex-spouse to get enriched.
Right.
But who don't?
Unjust enrichment is what that's called.
Unjust enrichment. You don't want that. Who does want that? And people don't want to be turned into an ATM. They want to have involvement in their children's life. And as you said, the compliance of people who go through mediation is an upwards of 90% from the stats that I've heard. It's almost totally opposite when you go to court.
Right.
I would say over 90% of people who get a settlement through a contentious divorce in court end up back in court. I remember I hired Raoul Felder, a famous divorce lawyer in New York City, and he spent 6 figures of my money. And I was mad. I said, how could you spend so much of my money, Mr. Felder? And he said, let me just tell you something. You think I'm making my money now? You're wrong. I'm going to make my money because you're going to be in court for the next 15 years, and that's where I'm going to make my money.
And it was 11.
And it was 11, and he knew it. He said, this is nothing, the retainer. You're going to keep coming back to me because your wife gets her rocks off doing this.
One of the things I do is I do Part 137 attorney-client fee disputes for Nassau County. So it's a panel of 3 with 2 attorneys. I'm the non-attorney on the board, and I've been doing it about 4 years now. All but 2 cases have been matrimonial. And you see these bills, and they're high. $35,000, $45,000, $125,000. That's a lot of money.
People can't believe it.
Now, in all fairness, there are some cases that have to be litigated. For example, domestic violence. You really can't mediate a case with domestic violence because one has a higher control over the other. The other might agree to something for fear of pissing off the controlling one. So maybe that case would have to be litigated, something like that.
So can you address one of the issues that's dear to my heart is parental alienation, because my ex-wife is an alienator, turning the children against
That's horrible.
So, but can you address issues such as parental alienation, or do they have to go to court too?
Yeah, no, I think, or I would like to think that because they're mediating, that doesn't happen. And sometimes you'll hear the language in the mediation session, like one will say, you're not doing that with my daughter, or you're not doing that with my son, and I stop and I say, wait a second, you mean Bobby? Bobby's your mom and dad. And I kind of you get the names in there, kind of brings them back to that. And you'll see that, well, I don't want this, I don't want that. I have one couple I dealt with a few years ago, and she didn't want to have 3 kids, and she didn't want one of them at dad's alone, if in the event that the other 2 didn't want to be there that weekend, because the other 2 were a little bit older. So wait a second, you can't do that. But I don't want it, I don't feel, well, why? He's my son too, and I had to, at that point, I had to interject. This is parent alienation, ding, ding, ding.
Right.
That's going to happen, and this was the same couple I told you about where there was infidelity, and so it really wasn't about that. It was about getting back at dad.
And I think a lot of the times the alienation is encouraged by the courts, because they're accomplices, because they let it happen. There's also an incentive to do it, that if I alienate, I'm going to get more money because I'm going to get the kids, and the kids are tied to money. Where I think in a mediation setting, you don't have that incentive because you're going to nip it in the bud right there. Yeah. You're going to stop it.
Alienation is horrible. We both know that.
Yeah, no, that's another whole show. Yeah. Tell me about your program. I see you're advertising a lot on Facebook, and that you do training programs to train other mediators.
I have
mediators.
I have 2 courses, actually 3, if you count the one I'm going to tell you about in a second. But I have a 3-day introduction to divorce mediation, and that's you're interested, maybe it's something you want to do, but it's kind of like a course to see if that's for you. I have a 5-day, 40-hour course to get certified as a family divorce mediator. My next course that I'm running on Saturday, January 13th, for people who've already been through the training and they don't know what to do next. So it's how to build your mediation practice. It's a half-day seminar on Saturday at my office in Hicksville, and we cover pretty much everything. I've been doing this for 6 years now. The first 2 years
The training programs for 6 years.
I've been mediating for 6 years.
Okay.
I started part-time in 2011, and in January of 2013, I went out full-time on my own. So I feel I could teach people, how to build their practice, what it takes to start getting clients, and do you want to do it part-time? Do you want to do it full-time? And I've done webinars on it for like 1 hour, hour and a half. But I figured a half day. People have been asking about, and you get more information, so I'm running that. I've already got 3 people signed up. 2 of them are attorneys who went through mediation training.
Because it's, I think it's also nice for people who went through a bad divorce or went through a mediation and say, you know what, I want to help others not go through this hell of court. And this may be a nice way. A lot of people become passionate about it, about how broken the system is. And like me, one of the things, I'm an advocate and as president of Americans for Legal Reform. And people say, why are you doing this? You're out of the system. I say, because I don't want people to go through what I went through. And I think mediation. So people watching this say, you know what, I want to do something. It's great. You can make some money at it, and you could also help people too.
Yeah, it's my full-time practice. I love working for myself. You're a business owner too. Neither one of us ever want to go work for somebody else again.
Right, absolutely.
And so there's a benefit, and you're really helping people. You really are. It's an emotional thing that they go through. And when you get couples at the end, like really contentious, and they come to me and say, "Wow, you were very calm. I can't believe it.
Right.
Thank you," and they'll refer me clients, and and it's not a repeat business, so I have to really add value and let people have to walk out and feel like it's a win-win.
Right. So tell me where are you located?
My office is in Hicksville on 201 Woodbury Road. My website is mymediationservices.com. I offer a free 30-minute in-office consultation, no obligation, and that's it. Check out my website. If you have any questions, give me a call, and I'd be happy to see if I can help you.
Great. Jeff Bloom, thank you very much for coming here and always being so generous with your time, speaking at meetings whenever you're asked, and educating people whenever I have them call you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks.
Take care.
I'm Gary Jacobs, and thank you for joining us at Long Island Backstory. For more information on where to reach Jeff Bloom, you can go to Long Island Backstory's Facebook page, and we'll link you to Jeffrey Bloom's mediation page. We'll see everybody next week.
Long Island Backstory is made possible in part by Americans for Legal Reform, the oldest, most successful legal group in the world. P.O. Box 2679, Huntington Station, New York 11746. Telephone 631-421-6390. Website Americans4legalreform.com.
Todd's a great guy. I mean, look at him. What a sweetheart. Attaboy. Wait, Todd, what are you doing? How totally selfish and un-Todd-like of you. Come on, Todd. Come on, man.
Long Island Backstory,